Good evening, familia. This is Ray Collazo, and you're watching and listening to the Found in Translation Talk Show, the talk show that stacks truth about politics and today's hottest issues. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, on these special sound-off editions on Tuesday night, I'm joined by my co-host and the unofficial, some would say official, madrina of Central Florida, Zoe Colon. Welcome to Found in Translation.
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I just thought of this. It's Translation Tuesday. Hey.
Translation Tuesday. I like that.
Found in Translation Tuesday. We can't do Taco Tuesday right now, but you know.
No. Well, don't say it too. We'll get so popular. LeBron will try to, take the trademark for our show as well. Zoe, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Excited to be on the show. Congratulations again for a phenomenal anniversary edition. Again, really happy to have been part of it, and and just ready to, have a great conversation today and see what we have a great surprise coming up. As a proud Boricua, ya tú sabes, I'm excited to announce.
It is so exciting. I know the hints are spilling out, but Zoe always gets to make the fun, exciting announcement of Found Translation leading up to the Thursday shows. That's very good. That's a nice niche you have there. So people, the media is going to, TMZ is going to start going to you for the inside information.
I like to keep
Found in Translation.
I like the fun stuff. So
absolutely. So, and we'll get into the fun stuff in a second. Today's show, we're going to have in a moment two of the nation's top Latina education experts that are really going to give us a rundown of the state of education for our children. We're really focused, rightfully so, obviously, on the immediate health issues and, of course, the ongoing economic crisis, which is is being impacted by this health pandemic. But our kids aren't in school and aren't physically in school at the very least, and how that impacts our children, not only from an education perspective, but a psychological perspective. Will they be in school in the fall? What's going to happen this summer? There's a lot in the air. And oftentimes, Latino children are sort of forgotten about when children are forgotten about often in these conversations. So in a moment, we're going to have Amalia Chamorro from Unidos US and Shirley Santos, who's an educator and a union leader in the great state of New Jersey. Zoe, the COVID-19 crisis is top of mind. We want to make sure that we give people a quick update on that, as well as a few other news headlines before we get to our education guests. But I want to give people an update. Two things. One is, in terms of the ongoing messaging of this administration, there's very much an agenda by this president and his supporters, particularly these Republican governors, to sort of just pretend that cases aren't going up, pretend that deaths aren't increasing disproportionately in minority communities, and then go back and tell those communities that are disproportionately minority and disproportionately would be people that would be going back to work, like Atlanta, like Orlando, like other places in the Midwest, Detroit. That, you know what? Who cares about federal guidelines? We just gotta get this going. So let's just pretend it's not still here, and business is normal. And I know Zoe, as an activist and as someone that just cares about our fellow citizens, this is unacceptable, and this falta de respeto and this lack of leadership is something that we just can't stand for. Zoe, what's your thoughts on this situation with these, like your governor DeSantis that wants to reopen the state when the problem hasn't gone away?
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to I have to do my routine shopping and that kind of thing. And you can see that people are getting a little bit more comfortable with being out. But I certainly don't think it's safe. I think, given the politics and what we've seen and the patterns that he's exhibited in the last few months, that there's a political motivation behind all of his decisions, right? And he's not necessarily putting our needs first and our safety first. So I'm always skeptical, particularly in a more conservative state like this, right? Especially when you see, Governor Cuomo and some other folks up north and other states being really proactive. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear though that today the HEROES Act was passed. And I'm not sure if you're going to add to that, but it sounds like that's going to be nearly $1 trillion going to state, local, territorial, and tribal governments. It includes emergency Medicaid, more stimulus money, hazard pay, And it seems like that's going to be expanded irrespective of immigration status, which is a big win for our community. There's another $100 billion going into emergency rental assistance and extension of eviction and foreclosure moratoriums, which I think is, again, especially important in communities of color that are disproportionately hit by COVID and less likely to bounce back, and a 15% boost in SNAP benefits, which is food stamp programs and other nutrition programs. So I think that's good news for our communities in particular. Let's see how it kind of plays out. As always, the devil's in the details. So hopefully, especially as it relates to the immigration status waiver, if you will. So let's see how that kind of plays out. But hopefully this is good news for our community.
Yes, and wanted to be clear that just literally hours ago, the HEROES Act that Zoe's discussing is actually the congressional on the House side. So this is basically the House Democrats' proposal to how to address CARES Act 2, Relief Act 4. There's a lot of sort of policy names to these things, but the bottom line is we're going to need more support in the community, and this is essentially the Democratic proposal how to handle it. Now, the key things which we're happy about, and again, this is an 1,800-page document, so I'm not going to front that we've studied. We're not ready for the open book test yet, but in our initial research, and Amalia, who's going to come on the show, is going to talk about the education portion of it in a second. The key thing here is that the House Democrats are trying to address a lot of the issues that Latino advocates and my day job at any of those shows have identified around dealing with the most basic needs: direct cash assistance, moratoriums on evictions and mortgage foreclosures, food. And so through that SNAP, through that's other nutrition programs, much of which our children were getting at their school. Right. And Amalia's going to talk about that in a second too. That's the House Democrats have put that on the table. The other part they put on the table here in their initial proposal, and again, let's keep it real, it hasn't even been passed in the House yet, is that vote is expected Friday, is that these resources, whether it's merging Medicaid and some of the other resources you discussed, Zoe, would go to people regardless of citizenship status and regardless if they're in a mixed status household. So what that means, when we talk about mixed status, we're talking about racial stuff. What we're talking about is, let's say you have one in a family, one partner is undocumented, even if the other one is a citizen and their children are all citizens,
right?
That family has not been eligible for any of these benefits. We have U.S. citizen children who happen to be in a mixed status family who almost certainly are Latino and almost certainly are people of color, who are starving unnecessarily, or not getting or maybe becoming homeless unnecessarily because of the relief packages that have been passed. So that's going to be a big fight for us. It's going to be an uphill climb, no question about it. Hopefully Stephen Miller will be distracted because his wife's in quarantine. So hopefully he won't be looking at all the fine print here. So this has been an ongoing struggle. And the bottom line is, folks, don't believe the hype. Just because they're going to pretend. The reality is the only thing they have is to fool us and to pretend that things are normal. When
seen a big push though from the community and celebrities to raise money for farm workers, for immigrant families. There was a huge concert, I believe, last weekend with proceeds going to farm worker families or farm workers. So and I supported that and I tried to spread the word. So I'm glad that it's raising a lot of consciousness and awareness around that issue, the fact that folks are not eligible if you're not a U.S. citizen, that you're not eligible for a lot of this relief assistance. And I think it's bringing national attention to the fact that this is a mispopulation. And also, like, when you think about the produce, like the factories that are shutting down, a lot of those workers are displaced. And, there's just a lot of segments of our community that are disproportionately Hispanic and communities of color that are being hit. And to think that during this time, in a time of crisis like this, your immigration status is going to determine whether you can, put food on the table is just ludicrous to me. So I'm glad that this bill, potentially has a solution for that.
Yeah, no. And the bottom line is we just got off a national town hall with, many people, but including Mayor Eric Garcetti, the mayor of Los Angeles, who's part Latino. And one of the things he mentioned was, look, even if you're a racist, even if you have fundamentally don't believe Latino immigrants should be in the country, period, you still want them not to get sick because the virus doesn't know your status and doesn't, we're all living amongst each other. And we're all, in the case of Latinos, are disproportionately the ones handling food, whether it's on the agricultural side, the meat packing side, you're working at Walmart, working at your local Ciudadanos. So our community, for the benefit of everyone, deserves this report. And quite honestly, if you're essential, because whether you're a healthcare professional that is here on a green card, or an undocumented immigrant who's here picking the food that we're eating day to day, or in a meatpacking plant slaughtering pigs and chickens in the Midwest, then how can you be essential and undocumented at the same time?
Right.
We got to keep that real. Be real about it. And so we've got to continue to keep the pressure up and raise our voice in this process. And don't believe the hype people just because they're telling us everything's okay. You all know the difference. Monte Perez, my homie, who's down in South Florida. I've kept this Chiron up because I love it. DeSantis is a domestic terrorist.
I saw that.
No question about it. And our great friend, actually, you're going to be part of the announcement at 8:30. So please keep listening to the show because I'm going to give you a shout out, a very special one in a second. Yvette Mayo, one of our great leaders, Houston, Texas, great businesswoman, y Boricua. There's a need to technology and internet access, education, completing applications, a gap in getting information to Latinos from trusted sources. Yvette, I believe, is referencing some of the business stimulus package resources, what they call the PPP, Payment Protection Plan Program, and some of the other stimulus resources for business. I know she's a great businesswoman in Houston.
We're going to be speaking on this later, but I'm working on some English and GED programs right now virtually, and we've had to actually purchase laptops and give them, provide loaners to folks that don't have access to technology at home in order for them to take these classes. So it's being felt in our community for sure.
Yeah, no, and we're feeling it in the activism side because we're looking like if for elections, we're gonna have to just text people and do social media. We're gonna have to buy our canvassers instead of clipboards. They got laptops, or they're gonna need tablets because you got to communicate with people multiple ways. The last thing before we get into the next segment of the show is, we want to continue to raise awareness and show solidarity, particularly as Latino activists in the social justice movement. For the whether it's I run for Ahmaud, or I stand with Ahmaud, I support with Ahmaud. Ahmaud Arbery, the young man, black man in Georgia that was horrifically, sensibly killed by two white terrorists. I don't know what else to call them, murderers. It's very important that not only we all stand with him, just as human beings and as people that believe in justice and civil rights and humanity, goes beyond politics or any other moniker. But particularly, we believe it's important in a found translation that we stand with Ahmaud as a Latino activist to say, you don't have to be African-American to believe in justice. Obviously, these criminal justice and social justice issues and criminal justice reform issues, policing issues impact our community. But let's keep it real. There's a lot of Latinos who work for ICE that are committing atrocities every day on the southern border. The police tape of that very aggressive police officer in New York that was basically beating up black guys, for not social distancing, Latino cop. So this sickness goes also into our community, but in this case, it's very important that Latinos stand with the Arbery family and stand for social justice. Zoe, I know as someone that cares very much about these issues, you also believe, as I do, that Latinos need to stand with the black community at this moment more than ever before.
Yeah, and we know that the only reason why this is on national news right now is because someone recorded it. It took 70 days, I believe, for an arrest to be made, and it was only after the video was available. So I know there's pros and cons to the way we communicate these days, but we wouldn't have otherwise even heard of this case, right? And this happens every day in our communities. It happens to African Americans. It happens to Latinos. It happens to anyone who looks undocumented. This concept of, citizens arrest is dangerous, particularly we don't live in a post-racist society. We don't live in a post-racial society, so it's I've been reading on citizens arrest and what that means and how it's interpreted, and particularly when we live in this kind of society. And so it's just really dangerous. And I know that folks on the law enforcement side will make arguments for ensuring that continues to be the case, that people have the ability of community policing and that kind of thing. And I'm sure there's some positives to that, but in a country where we still have institutionalized racism, and we have a current administration that continues to demonize immigrants and people of color, it is really dangerous. And I think I'll leave it there because there's so much more to say, but this is why we need to stand together as Black and Brown communities.
No, we're going to continue to have content and guests on the show from the African-American community that are on the front lines of dealing with this from a legal perspective and organizing perspective. The There's been a call for the Department of Justice to begin an investigation as a hate crime. I have mixed feelings about that, just because, as we just saw from the Michael Flynn case, the Department of Justice at this point is basically a political arm of this president in a way that really speaks to how we think about what the Soviet Union or China. Our country, frankly, is from many perspectives is eroding our democratic process, our social justice fabric. So this is this is really a dangerous time, and more important than ever before that we stand united and support each other, whether that's our health in the COVID-19 crisis, whether that's our lives as it comes to policing criminal justice issues. So we stand with the Arbery family. We run. I wish I was a runner. I have to get out there and do my 2.23. I encourage everyone, even if it's walking, to stand in solidarity with the Arbery family. But that's something we're going to continue to emphasize here on Found in Translation. Zoe, set us up for the next segment of the show. Let people know about we had a great event the other day. There's lots of highlights from these shows.
That's right.
And tell people how they can see the archives of the show and continue to support Found in Translation.
So if you missed it, you missed a great show. You can see the performances of all the special guests, including Frankie Negron and Pablo Batista, on our YouTube page. So it's youtube.com/RaisPodcast. You can subscribe to Found in Translation on iTunes and anywhere where you can download a podcast. So tune in so you can see Frankie Negron's performance, Pablo Batista, which brought a lot of flavor, percussionist, who's worked with Alicia Keys, among many others. So if you missed it, make sure to check it out.
No, we put a lot of work into our YouTube page. Thank you, Zoe. So I encourage people to subscribe, first of all, and check out the clips, because we not only have, all these live shows we've been doing, the full episodes are on there. So if you're like, wow, this Zoe Colon, she's so dynamic, I want to see more of her content, you're going to catch the last 3 or 4 of her episodes she's been on. Obviously, our talent extravaganza from the other day, a lot of highlights. So we clipped up all the artists. If you just want to see the individual performances, there's lots of great content on our YouTube page. And again, check out youtube.com/RaisPodcast. That's RAYS podcast, or just subscribe to the podcast, fam, the audio version of the show. And again, I believe this is episode 379. So we got a lot of good stuff for you. We're going to make a very special announcement in a minute, but want to bring on our education experts. We stand here for our children, and during this time, I know we're worried about them on many levels, but we have to let's be top of mind that education is really at a real fragile state right now for our children going into the summer, into this what was supposed to be the semester. So 2 folks that can give us sort of the national policy perspective and also the perspective of the classroom. 2 great friends to the show. Let's say hello to, from Unidos US, Amalia Chamorro.
Hola.
And a New Jersey teacher and union labor activist, Shirley Santos. Shirley and Amalia, welcome to Found in Translation.
Welcome.
Thank you. Super honored to be here. First time, super excited.
It's very rare that someone that's such a committed fan to the show, as you have been from the beginning, Shirley, would have taken so long. But you're a busy woman. Our schedules just didn't click a lot, so you always had a lot going on as a school teacher. So one of the blessings of quarantine is that you were able to come on the show. So thank you, Shirley. And of course, Amalia, who is the Associate Director of Education Policy for Unidos US, the nation's largest Hispanic civil rights organization. We couldn't have 2 better people on this show. So Amalia, let's start with you.
All right, on the hot seat.
Oh, let's absolutely. So, Amalia, let's just start with you. Can you please just give us sort of a big picture perspective on, the fact that obviously our children literally in K through 12 have not been in school physically for over 2 months. There's varying degrees of online learning going on, and just your initial thoughts that what's important for us to think about as we're thinking about the education of Latino children during COVID-19.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is something that, happened very rapidly, right? In terms of the shift from being in the classroom and then having to do remote learning from the home. And so this was a big shift, for teachers, for parents, for students. As of a couple of months ago, many schools across the U.S., have, basically said that they'll continue to do online learning for the rest of the school year, but also many school years are coming to an end, and many school districts kind of got started late in that, right? So there's not been a lot of time to get up and running for students. So there's already, been a lot of learning loss. That's only going to be, exacerbated by, the typical summer learning loss that we see. And, unfortunately, we're going to see students, right, who will be unprepared for the new school year come the fall. And we don't really know at this point what the fall is going to look like, right? Because we're hearing, from Dr. Fauci and from other health experts that we could see a second wave in the fall. So we don't necessarily know for sure that students will be back in the classroom in the fall, right? And, we're talking about, K-12 students, college students, even the little ones, right, in terms of preschool, because first and foremost, we want to make sure that our students, our teachers are safe, right? But we also want to make sure that, we're all doing our due diligence and also keeping Congress and the administration accountable, right, to make sure that students don't fall further behind, especially, underrepresented students and underserved students like English learners, right, who, we're already experiencing wide opportunity gaps compared to the rest of their peers.
Amalia, can you mention a little bit more on that? Because, what we've been often saying on the show here on Fan Translation is that, this COVID-19 crisis has really sort of exposed the real holes and inequities in our society. Right. That adversely impact you by class, zip code, race, and ethnicity. See, can you talk a little bit about how you're seeing that now even more so with Latino students? Because, depending on what school district you're in, depending on what zip code you live in, the response to, the transition has been very different for kids, right? And I know a lot of Latino, so this is something that has impacted our community disproportionately. Can you talk about the inequities that already existed that this is exposing?
Yes. And so we have about, currently 13 million Latino students in the K-12 public school system. About 9 million Latino students are enrolled in Title I schools. So these are the schools, with high, low income populations. And typically these are the schools with the least resources, right? So we already saw that inequity exist in our public education system, and that's something that our Latino students were already experiencing. And, now where we are at now, that's only going to get worse, and it is getting worse, right? So we're talking about students, many of Latino families, did not have computers, tablets, devices, to actually be able to even access the digital learning platforms that, their schools switched to. And, we did see many schools and school districts step up and provide their students with devices, but not all of them were able to do so, right? And, even, some of our affiliates, who are public charter schools, were savvy enough to, try to, do some corporate partnerships, anything to just be able to, get some support to be able to provide their students with those devices. So having a device is one thing, but also, connectivity. Many Latino families are not connected to the internet. Many just rely on their cell phones, right? Their mobiles.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right.
And, the other part is childcare, because let's keep it real. The vast majority of Latinos still have to go to work because they're essential. So on some level, those were the lucky ones, right? If they didn't get laid off, they're going to work. And so the management or the support that many of us who are privileged enough to be home for whatever reason are able to provide the child is not there for a lot of Latino kids. Not because their parents don't care, because look, we got kids, we got parents in our community that are literally giving their kid the cell phone and racking up the cell phone bill so they can do homework on their cell phone. So it's not that we're not committed to it, but there's a lot of these obstacles that you're speaking to. Shirley, as a school teacher in New Jersey, that's in one of these school districts that's, doesn't have the resources that those children deserve. I know the points that Amalia is making, you're seeing day to day in your community in New Jersey.
Oh, absolutely. In this era where we are, designing remote lessons and using video call platforms and doing all these new things that perhaps students were not doing during the regular school day, it definitely has been a change for them. And there's so many other factors that we as educators can't control in the classroom that now, parents have to do in their in their home and they're not able to. The structured learning, the scheduling, making sure students are on task, making sure that there's no distractions. And unfortunately, during home time, a lot of students do not have that kind of environment that's more conducive to learning. And before I continue, I want to give it a shout out to all the teachers and all the parents that are still hanging in there and doing the best they can. And then not only the structured environment, but I want to talk about what Amalia talked about. That's extremely important. I think, as educators, we are advocates, and we've constantly been advocating and talking about, the have and the have-nots for our students, right? Especially if they're second language learners. And I think this has been a wake-up call. They have had the opportunity to really see that, many of our students not only don't have technology, but the access to internet is just so crucial, and it's just non-existent in a lot of our students' homes. And so, we have tried to talk to these companies, and they have, stepped it up and, have offered basically free internet to these families. But a lot of them, because of XYZ, because they're working, because, they don't have any transportation, it's just really difficult for them to really get the services. And the lack of information in Spanish as well, and I have to say, in my personal experience, my district has made a lot of effort into giving students, technology. We've been blessed that we have enough technology. But then again, without internet access, what do you do?
Shirley, can you talk a little bit about, in terms of your classroom experience and your experience with the district, in terms of some of the specific issues impacting the EL population? So those are English learners. I don't want to get thrown off people that don't know the education policy terminology. So, they're not all immigrants. Obviously, you have a Puerto Rican population that goes back and forth from your community, as many do around the country.
Absolutely.
Now. So talk a little bit about some of those distinct challenges for our EL population, and then we'll bring Zoe on for our special announcement. And Amalia, you'll be able to jump in on that after, okay?
Well, I mean, there's so many and they're so varied, and that's the issue. I can't pinpoint to just one or two because there's so many. So, for example, you have families of mixed status, you had talked at the top of the show, and so these families have unique challenges in terms, are they willing to go out and seek XYZ service while being in fear because of the current situation. So that has a direct impact on students and how they are learning, right? But the other thing is also the access to technology, the access to the internet, like I mentioned, and also it's where they are in their educational journey, right? So we have a lot of students that are who came from, countries, Central America, South America, and they come from different educational structures. They come here. Usually they're way behind. And so we are always trying to catch up. And like Amalia said, during this time, it's, the gap is going to increase even more. And because let's face it, there's nothing that can take the place of a teacher and the support professionals in a classroom. As much as you want to use technology with the latest, that is out there, the latest tools, there's nothing that can substitute that, face-to-face interaction with the teacher, the services that we provide. Schools not only provide, the education, but a lot of our schools are providing the only nutrition that the students get, meals. I mean, it's, counseling, emotional support. So schools are not just strictly just education. There's just so much more.
Absolutely. You're listening to Shirley Santos and Amalia Chamorro, two education experts, one in the classroom, one on a national policy level on found translation. Amalia, after our announcement, I want to go back to you. and talk about how do we advocate now for our Latino students, but particularly that EL population, because we're going to need more support from them on the federal level. We're going to need to advocate for them on the state and local level. So I want to ask you that question after our announcement, but I got to give people what they want. You know, these Tuesday shows with Zoe are becoming kind of like the sound off episodes, and there's always like some juicy reveals on these episodes. So, you know, Zoe, we just came off an exacerbating, exhilarating to a 7th anniversary episode. Amalia, if you haven't seen it, check it out on YouTube. Quite a time. Frankie Negron, a cavalcade of stars. And so, you know, we were thinking about it, said, you know, as they say, and we need to drop another banger. And we were thinking about it. There's a hole here because of COVID-19 that's happening on the calendar, and we need to fulfill it. So, Zoe, make a very special announcement about a very special episode that's coming up in June.
Bueno, if you're from New York, if you're New Rican, or if you grew up on the state side, you all know that in June, you got the Puerto Rican Day Parade in New York City. And because of COVID, we're not going to be able to, you know, celebrate the 116 festival, which is huge as well in our community. And we're not, you know, having our parades in Orlando and in
Chicago had to cancel their parade.
Chicago, I'm sure there's a ton in Patterson, New Jersey. I mean, they're all over the country, right?
Summer ones, yeah.
So we're happy to announce that we're going to be celebrating our culture and having a party right here on Found in Translation. We're going to bring the huepa. We're going to bring the huepa, and we're going to have a special Puerto Rican summer celebration episode on Thursday, June 11th. So look out for the special announcements and who's going to join us. And we're going to have the Boricua party of the summer. I wish we had that song, Puerto Rico, yo nunca dejaré de amar.
This is going to be quite a time.
Puerto Rican parade like song. So
come on now. Yes.
So excited to do this.
This is going to be a good time. This is going to be, I see this being like a 4-hour episode because we bring the party. So I think people saw the event we did a few weeks ago. I mean, look, we put that together in 10 days and we had Frankie Negron, we had celebrities, we had an amazing talent. 2 people on that show, by the way, have gotten paid gigs because of the show. So, I mean, we're discovering the next celebrities, next icons in our community. So we're going to have a great time. And so it's going to be Thursday, June 11th. It's not anything officially associated with the New York Puerto Rican Parade. I don't need any hack lawyers in New York sending me, you know, desist orders. But we're going to have our own celebration, Puerto Rican style. It's going to be a great show. We're not only going to have artists and singers and entertainers, but we're also going to honor, as we did in the last show, in this case, Puerto Ricans that are making positive contribution. And I want to announce as part of this that Shirley Santos is going to be the teacher that we're going to announce. So you're going to be the education ambassador of this festival. So make sure you put on your calendar, Shirley. You're going to be on the show. So and I want to announce, it's just by coincidence she was watching. This is truly going to be a national celebration. We're going to bring it out. Yvette Mayo, who's watching the show, Yvette, you're going to be the person we're going to highlight and celebrate, the Puerto Rican leader in Texas. So Yvette, 2 of the honorees are part of the show today. So really excited. So July 11th, I don't know, we're probably going to start at 4 in the afternoon or something. But July 11th, that evening, Thursday, July 11th, we're going to have a Puerto Rican extravaganza on June. I'm sorry, June 11th. June 11th. So
June 11th.
Yeah, the New York Puerto Rican would have been the 14th or something. So we're going to do it the Thursday before in celebration. So a month from now. So, and by the way, Amalia, we're not forgetting about you're Peruvian, right, Amalia?
28 de Julio. Yeah, hello. How about our holiday?
Power in the house.
July.
Power in the house. Hey, we can put together a nice episode. Amalia, I don't know if you know this, but the personal trainer for the show, Jennifer Saavedra, who at this point probably quit on me because I'm so bad. She's Peruvian. The woman that did our coverage on Standing Rock, that went to Standing Rock during that time, Peruana, Cindy Rodriguez, who's a big supporter of the show, also a podcaster. And the woman that comes on to talk about hip hop and the urban scene, Mina Say What, the people know who's on Sirius Satellite Radio, big hip hop radio announcer, is also Peruvian. So we can put together this Peruvian show. That wouldn't be a problem.
Right,
so let's negotiate, Amalia. I'm down to negotiate. We need a good Pisco sponsor.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody, I think we should have someone come to the show to show us how to prepare ceviche. Etilu.
Ooh.
So we could
Yeah.
go that way.
Papa la huancaína, that's like my favorite.
Yum,
Papa la
yum, yum.
huancaína.
I love Peruvian food, no question about it. And
Yeah.
you're listening. And so, Zoe, thank you for that announcement. Zoe always gets to do the honors here on Found Translation. More to come on that. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I want to make sure we get back to the conversation around how do we support education during this COVID-19 crisis, our children. Yet another part of this crisis is the education of our children. Shirley, I was thinking about it, that there are children in our community. I'm thinking about our Puerto Ricans for a second, that lost pretty much a year of school in PR after Hurricane Maria.
Yes.
And now we're living or either in PR or in the States, and now losing another semester.
That is correct. That has been, I think the last year we had at between 50 and 60 students in our bilingual program who fit that profile. And, parents arrived here, they just took off, arrived with nothing. We helped them, get settled. And now, unfortunately, here we are with the COVID-19 situation. And once again, students are, going to fall behind, unfortunately. But I have to say, teachers have been collaborating with each other. We've been working hand in hand with administration. And, when things, I've always said that schools should run bottom up as opposed to top down. Go figured, right? And it's been wonderful to see how they're seeking finally, I would say more than ever, our input on what's going to happen next year. How are we going to help the kids, get back on track with their education? So we'll see what happens.
And I'm not optimistic about the fall. I mean, the virus doesn't go away. So, and we don't have a cure. Beverly Justiniano comments in the chat, they need mental health services as well. So I know that's something that Amalia has been tracking.
Childhood best friend from the Bronx. I just want to say
Down's always in the building. No question about it. So I want to get back to Amalia Chamorro as part of this conversation. So Amalia, we kind of have a good sense of the scope of this problem. It's a major issue. And so can you talk a little bit about what Unidos and your policy expertise, what are y'all looking to advocate for? And what are the things we need to support you as we advocate for more services for our children to get through this time period? Because this is a crisis of our children's education as well.
Yeah, so Unidos, we've been advocating with our other organizations and partners, members of Congress, to have dedicated funding for English learners, Title III, and future stimulus packages, including this one. Because the funding that's been provided so far in the CARES Act, which was the previous comprehensive stimulus bill, and then the one that just came out today, the HEROES Act on the House, provide broad funding for education that could go to support, students like English learners, but it doesn't specify that money has to go to support that student population. So it's really up to the states and the local education agencies that receive these funds, how they're going to use them, and if and how they're going to use that money to support English learners. So we have been pushing for dedicated funding specifically for English learners, because that is such a severely underserved population. So we did lead the drafting of a sign-on letter with 45 other organizations, and we're not just talking about Latino organizations, civil rights organizations, Asian organizations. We English learners aren't just Latinos and Spanish speakers, right? While we do comprise the largest segment of the English learner population, there's also a significant population of English learners that speak Arabic, Chinese, Vietnamese. So, we're all in this together, right? Just like with the COVID. So we've been pushing for that on the House side, and we did work with, two members of Congress, Representatives Langevin from Rhode Island, and also Representative Espaillat from New York, who co-led this Dear Colleague letter in the House. So they got their peers in the House to sign on to this letter asking for $1 billion specifically for English learners. And then we just looked at the bill that came out today. So again, that includes for broad funding, but not specifically for English learners. So that's something that we're going to continue to push for. And we are actually working with Senator Cortez Masto in the Senate side. She's from Nevada, and she's leading the
only Latina in the U.S.
Senate side. Yeah, I know. We only have 2 Latinos in the Senate, right? Menendez and Cortez Masto.
Well, 2 Democrats. Technically, we have 4. But
yeah. Right. You would know, Rafael. And so, we're just thankful that, to have our champions on the Hill carrying the water for us, right?
No question.
And
Amalia, yeah.
Yeah.
So Amalia, I know you're doing some Florida specific work that I want to touch on. Zoe Colon being one of our activists in Florida, I know is very interested in that as well. But Zoe, I wanted to loop you in this conversation because we also can't forget about our higher ed students in this process. We've had conversations with Ernesto Mejia and his children that are literally college students that are dealing with this issue. So we have touched on the show, but I want to make sure, Zoe, I know you're doing some advocacy work and supporting students who are trying to, try to achieve their higher ed degrees during this very challenging time.
Yeah, so I work for the University of Central Florida, and I'm also an activist in the Hispanic community. And what we're really pivoting to do now is to try to touch as many adult learners as possible. So, we think about these households that children are expected to thrive in, right? So distance learning is tough for an adult. It's tough for a quasi-educated person. It's tough for most people. And then in our community, unfortunately, we have a disproportionate amount of families that can't support their children, right? I wouldn't know the first thing about helping a child with math, one, because I don't have children, but also because it's changed, right? And so we have folks that have lower levels of educational attainment that are now charged with their children's education and offering structure in the house and dealing with mental health issues, as Beverly mentioned, right, in our comments. So, not to mention folks that have been through traumatic events like Hurricane Maria, like the earthquakes, and so many other traumatic events just from coming from a low-income community, in general. And so, there's not enough mental health resources. Not everyone is comfortable with virtual counseling. So there's a lot of barriers and obstacles in trying to do this work effectively. But one of the things that I've shifted to focus on right now, both through my formal work and my volunteer and community work, is to focus on non-traditional adult learners. So those very parents that are charged with their children's education that may not be fluent in English. So that's definitely an issue. So English language adults, right? English learners that are adults, I'm sorry. We have a ton of Haitians in the community here in Central Florida, folks that speak Arabic, and of course the fast growing Puerto Rican population, Venezuelan population that speak Spanish. And so we started some online English classes through UCF, and we did a community university partnership, which is pretty cool. And we're offering free online English classes for the community, and it was open to everyone. We filled up in 2 days, literally 2 days. We have 100 participants signed up for that class. We also opened up a GED course online, again, for free. So we've had to actually purchase computers to make loaners out to adults who don't have computers in their household, or maybe they have some children through this school district, I think up to 4th grade, from 4th to 12th grade in the K through 12 system actually have laptops. And in some cases, there's special grants to offer hotspots as well for Wi-Fi access, right? But a lot of times children need those computers. Maybe there's other children in the household that don't have a computer. And so we've been making loaners out. So we've been really focusing on adult education, particularly developing English proficiency, but also looking at the COVID crisis and people being displaced from work as an opportunity for them to kind of reimagine what they'd like to do next, right? So if you're in an industry that's susceptible to layoffs and furloughs because you work at Disney, right? There's a reason why Jorge Duani, the professor over at FIU, coined the term Mickey Ricans, right? We have folks coming here, in waves, and they take, a lot of folks will take entry-level jobs in the parks, right? And so, these are folks that are susceptible to being laid off because they don't have permanency, they don't have full-time status, and so it's really trying to take advantage of this opportunity out of this crisis, unfortunately, to see if people can really think through what their next step is in their career. So we have a ton of programs, accelerated training programs through Valencia College and UCF and others in our community that are public institutions that offer you certifications and trades. And oftentimes those trades are actually the fastest growing, so it may be very different in New York, but here, for example, like aviation and defense and all these different sectors are fast growing, and they don't necessarily need degrees fees to enter them and make $30 an hour. So we're partnering with a lot of these state colleges and accessible institutions that are affordable and in many cases are funded so that you don't have to pay for the certification program to get our people in there. So I feel like there's been a big push to do this workforce development programming, but in our community, I don't think the word is out, so I'm trying to do as much as possible to put information out there about what programs are available, get people into GED, get people into English, because those are the first steps before they can get into post-secondary. And of course, before they can actually foster like a college going culture in their own homes, right? Because it's really hard to support your children and their dreams if it's hard for you to imagine that this is possible. And so working on the adults is something that I'm really passionate about. And that's what we're trying to do. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Amalia, you're doing a lot of work in Florida as well. We highlight Florida as much as we can, not just when Zoe's on the show, because it really is ground zero for the Latino civil rights movement as much as anywhere, right?
Right.
And sort of the elections matter. And we see that very clearly in Florida on the state level. So Amalia, can you share with us some of the challenges you've identified and some of the ongoing work we're doing in Florida to raise awareness around Latino and EL education for Latino students in Florida?
Yeah, for sure. Over the last couple of years, we've been working to sponsor a bill there and working with organizations like LULAC, and our affiliates to have Florida adopt a native language assessment program for English learners. And in the top two languages, so in Spanish and Creole, right? And so, we have, done a lot of research. Texas has had a native language assessment program for many, many years. And really what it would do is it would, enable English learner students to be able to take assessment tests in math and science in the language that they actually speak at home, right? So that we can actually get a more accurate, meaningful read of where they're at academically and be able to place them, in the right classes at the right levels, and also be able to get them the support that they need. So it has been a bipartisan bill over the last couple of years. We're hoping to get it over the finish line next session, but in the meantime, with COVID and everything that's going on, the Unidos team, and this wasn't just for education, but for all the issues that we work on, the economy, health, we did draft and send a letter to the governor and the lieutenant governor and the state house leadership last week, really laying out Unidos's, recommendations for, what the state of Florida can do, both with the stimulus funds that they're getting from the federal government, but also what the state of Florida can do, right, and take initiative on to support, the Latino population, including English learners.
That's why it's so important that we, this is the reason why I do the show, Amalia, because let's be honest about it. This is part of the getting the word out on these issues is part of kind of the civil rights struggle of our time, because the lack of talent, the lack of knowledge, the lack of potential solutions, the lack of resources, the lack of people, educators like Shirley, policy experts like yourself, we have the ability, we have proposals as you've laid out to address these issues. So this isn't about just trying to complain for complaining's sake. These are identified problems that you've identified in this case through data and research, and propose solutions from best practices in education, not only on a federal level, state level. And we have so few outlets, particularly in English language, to communicate to the Latino community around these conversations. So it's so important that we continue to have voices and expertise like Amalia and Shirley and Zoe on Founded Translation. So that's why it's important to support the show, fam, because we could do more of this, to have these conversations and spread the word. Amalia, people are watching and want to advocate for English language learners, want to advocate for more resources, whether it's nationally or statewide, but they're not an educator. They may not even be a parent. They're just someone that's watching this or hearing this that wants to support, wants to represent, maybe has an immigrant background and wants to, that's feeling what you're talking about. How can they get engaged in education advocacy for our Latino students?
Yeah, so we actually have Unidos has a education news platform, news and resources. It's called a Progress Report. So you can just type in progressreport.co on your browser and it'll take you there. But we have information there both in English and Spanish. We even have an explainer video, in English and Spanish there in terms of what was included in the last stimulus package. And we're going to continue to update, right, in terms of like if there's a next stimulus package that the Senate passes and the president signs, what's going to be in it. So that's definitely a good resource for, teachers, educators, students, parents. And, we try to de-wonkify, the policy there, right? To just, be able to, lift up for the general public what's going on in education that impacts Latino students. But we also lift up stories from teachers, from students about their experiences and how, the policies that decision makers are making are impacting their daily lives. And we also have, students, they're from our fellowship programs that write their own blogs. So it's really cool. You guys should check it out. And there's also opportunities there to not only get informed, but also, join Unidos in our advocacy efforts.
Amalia, I know a great EL teacher in New Jersey that would be good to highlight.
Oh, all right.
The conversation. Shirley, give some advice, Shirley, to parents right now.
Oh my goodness,
they're really struggling with this.
I know.
Whether they're earning a teacher's certificate at home doing this, and the new math, and trying to deal with the technology, or the different obstacles. Right, like at best case, you're helping, right? Or you're coming home. I know people that are doing homework with their kids, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. Because that's the time they have. So just any message that you have to the parents out there that are now in your shoes, my friend.
That's right. So definitely I would say, communicate with the teacher. We are here. We are as worried or even more worried about our students. We miss them, but we are also a resource for parents. I mean, I have done things like FaceTiming parents, calling them any time that they need to help them either, troubleshoot homework, troubleshoot technology issues. I mean, you name it, we've done it. And we want to continue to do that. And so I would say, first and foremost, make sure that you're communicating with the teacher for any reason. Then the other thing is I have like little short things that they can do at home. Something as simple as a schedule. If you're able to keep your child on a schedule, I know it's difficult, but, and just, in that schedule, have blocks of times where it's just dedicated to being on the computer. Please don't put the kid on the computer all day long. I mean, that never works. The younger they are, the less time they should be on the computer. Just break it down for them and provide them with enough time to play and kind of like, step away and walk away from the computer, go outside if they are able to do breaks, exercise. A
lot of negotiating there.
And keep them motivated. Motivated. Give them some incentives. Don't promise to buy X, Y, or Z because, we're broke right now. But, you could provide extra dessert, maybe, extra movie time, extra TV time, extra play time outside, kind of like negotiate and finagle, because that's what we do when we're in the classroom. Trust me, we're constantly, trying to keep kids motivated and on task. So those are just little tidbits.
No, that's very helpful.
Think parents are easy enough.
I would suggest this, Shirley. I think this is what we should
do.
Seriously.
What should we do?
You need to create, I'm serious. You need to do like maybe 2 or 3 1-minute videos or short videos of those tips.
Okay.
Where you have a little time to kind of elaborate a little bit. Idioma, because Shirley, English is her second language. I mean, this woman's a accurate Spanish speaker. So and we'll play them on the show and we'll put them on YouTube.
Okay.
I'm serious because
sounds
that's
like
the kind of information. That's the kind of I can't speak for Amalia's social media, but that's the kind of information that's really valuable. I'm serious, and we'll play it on the show because the biggest thing, and Amalia can tell you, the biggest feedback we get from Latinos all over the country is "hay falta de información en español," like for everything, economic stuff, health, everything. So whatever you want to do, you have a platform here at Found Translation, and people are going to see you on the June Parranda episode anyway. So, but in between, you're welcome to contribute further to the show.
Thank you.
Amalia, any other shout outs? We do at the end of the show sound offs on these Tuesday episodes, or anything else you want to talk about on Found Translation you want to share with our audience?
Thank you so much for having me. This is my first time, as a panelist in your show. Really cool. I already subscribe and I look forward to joining the future ones. The Puerto Rican virtual parade.
Oh, you're going to be in it, girl. We're going to have Zoom party, Zoom rooms. There's going to be a lot going on. Let me ask you a question, Molly, because people don't understand, and I feel so bad for my coworkers and people that are close to me because I'm so obnoxious. This is all I do is talk about this show. So, Amalia, was it what you expected? I mean,
yeah, it's, honestly, like I felt like it's a good mix of like, like information that you need to know, and then also just we all need some lighthearted stuff right now, just to be able to deal with everything. Whether you're a teacher, right, or an advocate, this is affecting everybody in different ways, and so it's good to just have a platform, a space to be able to also just let loose a little, right? And then also just take on serious issues.
Yeah, we're gonna have gonna be a lot of fun. June 4th, we didn't get to. I want to make a couple quick announcements. June 4th, the episode before the big Puerto Rican special party episode is gonna be ladies' night. So Zoe and the other women that host the show with me are gonna take over the stream. I'm taking a week off, and they're gonna do the show. So I don't know what they're gonna do. It's their show. I have no control of it. Not that men have ever really have control anyway. But so Zoe, I'm sure we'll have announcements. So Zoe, I know we're excited about that. So also look out for that show as well, Amalia. Shirley, any final thoughts on this episode you wanted to share? Then I have a question for you.
Well, okay. So I just basically wanted to again send out my shout outs to my teachers, to my support professional, the parents, everybody involved in this, COVID-19 situation and trying to educate their children and their students. So please hang in there. We're doing the best we can. It's certainly not enough, and there's so much more we have to do. But we're hanging in there. And the other, if I may, I just wanted to send out a shout out to all those Latino organizations or all the other organizations that are serving, people of color and minorities during this time of COVID who are making such a difference. I can name a couple that I'm very involved with Acción Social Puertorriqueña, Hispanos Pro Educación, the Hispanic Advisory Board at the college here, where we are continuing to fundraise for our Latino students to making sure, we can eliminate some of the barriers that are, keeping them from continuing their college education. So many that are out there, people at my school who every Monday are out there giving out food for the families, and my church with the food pantry. I mean, everybody. I mean, it's been disheartening to see what's happening, but at the same time, we have had the opportunity to see what we really can do when we work together, right? And how much there's so much good out there. Sometimes we just focus on the negative and we don't realize that there's so much good out there, and people, when they band together can really, really make a difference. So I just wanted to give that.
Merari La Dueña, great Facebook moniker, says it very well. Yes. Shirley, she gets the job done for Latinos in our community. No question about it. Shirley's part of a wonderful family. Un saludo a tu titi, Maria La Boya. Great
yes,
friend.
Maria La Boya.
And your homegirl, everybody's homegirl, Maida Arroyo, a former elected official in Highland. And another someone that works in higher education who's been part of our higher ed conversations over the years. Yes. So, Amalia, have you ever been to Vineland, New Jersey, Amalia?
I haven't. I don't know that I've actually been to New Jersey except just
a Peruvian that's never been to New Jersey. That's very strange to me.
I know. I did have family that lived in Patterson for a while.
Of course, you're Peruvian. Of course, you had family in Patterson. We got to get you down to Vineland. A lot of good educators, a lot of good stuff going on. Zoe Colon, of course, as always on Tuesday, you get the final word. Anything else you wanted to share? I know we're already excited for the Boricua celebration episode. The countdown has begun.
Absolutely. No, I just wanted to give a shout out to all the teachers. I know personally in the community that I work here in Paramore, there are teachers, going to homes to drop off worksheets and things like that for families that don't have access to the internet. So, big shout out and kudos to people who really care. Like Shirley was saying, Amalia was saying, this is a true testament to like how we band together, right? And teachers are our real heroes. And I think parents are realizing that the more and more they have to take up this role at home. Yeah. So, thank you, for being on the show and for sharing your insight and your knowledge. And, I hope we see you again So
No question about it. So I want to shout out Felix Montelada. A lot of people are giving kudos and great commentary in the chat box. Raiza Relis Collado likes the show, is now following the show. So always welcome new listeners. Felix Montelada, a great friend to the show, was on the special celebration we had. He's one of the great Spanish language podcasters. Felix, we need Shirley to get a Spanish podcast going and on his radio station. And he has an organization in Montgomery, Alabama, Amalia. Hola. So he's supporting the Latino community down there. We have people all over the country, all over the world watching and commenting on the show. Thank you so much for our education experts and advocates, Amalia Chamorro and Shirley Santos. And of course, my fearless co-host.
Thank you for having me.
Always riding shoddy, Zoe Cologne. You know, I also, lastly, I want to shout out these kids because they're handling this better on some level than the adults. I know that, I would have gone crazy in the 80s if this had happened to me, and God, I would have been so bored. And my kids have showed a lot of strength. I think a lot of the children out there and young people have showed a lot of resilience to this process. They're thirsting for knowledge. They're trying to get on these computers. There's kids, getting their parents to pull up to hotspot parking lots and trying to do some work and trying to get some knowledge and be proactive and be productive. So shout out to these children. They've gone through a lot and we have to continue to support them. Thank you so much for joining and following this edition of Found Translation. Enjoy the rest of your week. Stay safe, and we'll see you all on Thursday night's episode.
All right. Thank you for having me. Bye.